I truly dread weekends. Every week, a nightmare awaits me at my own home, the very place I believe I should be safe. After such a long time, I finally achieved my dream of living in my own home. I've always wondered what it was like to have a large place to live. However, my beloved house hosts a dreadful party to entertain my parent-in-laws, who drop by unannounced every week and behave in such awful ways, the most atrocious of which is making me feel unsafe and unhappy in my own home. Of course, I have no intention to be there, but they never give me a choice. And there are no breaks either. And so there I am, their slave to serve them food, alcohol, and on especially jolly days, entertainment. My husband and I have been married for 3 years now, and we both work our own jobs. When we first got married, we were living in an apartment with 2 individual rooms, along with a living room joining the kitchen. Over time, we grew unsatisfied with where we lived, so we started to discuss the idea of getting our own house.
Hey, honey, I think it's time for us to get a home of our own.
I was just about to say that. I'd like to have a house too. As you're well aware, a house is a pretty big purchase. I supported my husband, who was a man with a bad habit of letting money slip through his fingers without managing it much. I supported him by economizing expenses and focusing lots of energy, effectively saving up money to buy a nice house for us. After perhaps 2 years, we finally had enough money to buy a house, and we quickly started looking for a good enough place.
So, what's going on with the house?
There are just so many decisions to make, and every single one of them is pretty hard. I haven't decided on anything yet. I spent as much time and energy as I could looking for a house on my days off from work. I was getting really tired too. You could help me out a little bit.
Sorry, honey, I can't. Works make me pretty busy.
Ha, you really do leave everything up to others, huh?
Oh, I know. Why don't you look for a place together with my parents?
Wait, what? I don't want to cause any trouble for your parents, honey. I'll try to find a place myself.
That's fine. They're involved in this anyway. It'll help them out as much as it'll help you.
Hang on, what? What do they have to do with us buying ourselves a house?
You'll see.
I noticed that my husband's tone sounded hesitant, and I wondered why it sounded like that. To be honest with you, and this will just be between us, I always felt a little uncomfortable with my parent-in-laws, and being with them was never something to look forward to. But, despite my best intentions to stay away from them for my own sake, I almost immediately got a call from my parent-in-laws.
Have you decided on a home yet? I'm thinking of hiring a contracting company run by an acquaintance of mine.
About the home, Mr. Cox. Raymond and I will decide where to live together. Thank you so much for offering to help, though. I really appreciate it, is what I said in order to make him no longer interested in asking after the situation regarding the house. A few days later, however, an acquaintance of mine is going to introduce me to a very nice piece of land out on the outskirts of the city, dear.
I got a call from the building company saying they haven't heard from you. Did you call them at all?
Before I even knew what the heck was happening, the house I would be living in was being built on land I never knew existed, constructed by a company I don't know personally at all. Pardon me, Mr. Cox, Mrs. Cox. I really think Raymond and I should be the ones to decide everything. He himself told me he wanted to buy a house instead of build one, and he hoped it would be somewhere near downtown where his job is. But Raymond, our own son, told us directly that he wants us to decide.
Make sure it's all electric too, alright?
My parent-in-law's interference with what Raymond and I grew more and more substantial every day. I told my husband to tell his parents to stop interfering with what is rightfully ours to decide, but he would have none of it.
Why won't you listen to my parents and just let them handle everything? We won't be spending a whole bunch of time on this. It's literally a win-win for both of us.
I want to hear your opinion. What do you, Raymond Cox, my husband, want to do with getting a house for ourselves?
Just shut up. Consider my parents' opinion my opinion.
What the heck are you talking about? They want me to build a house garden for flowers and vegetables in the area that we decided was supposed to be used for a garage. They're trying to build a stone oven in the kitchen. Is that your opinion, Raymond? Is that what you want? And one day, as I was trying to convince my husband to get his parents to back off, and him trying to get me to stop nagging, just before the start of construction...
Excuse me. Please confirm that you really agree with the terms of the contract?
I got a call from the construction company I hired to build us the house. I've already had a thorough consultation with the leading architect of the project, and everything seemed to be perfect. Yes, of course, I confirm. Is there anything wrong? The contractor seemed extremely reluctant to say anything.
When we first negotiated the project, you mentioned that you and your husband are planning to move in? Just the two of you? Without anyone else?
Yes, that's correct. And then, the builder went on to tell me something truly shocking and truly disheartening.
These plans suggest that the final outcome will be built exactly like a two-family house, ma'am. Are your parents moving in with you?
I felt like I had been hit on the head with a mallet, and now a sledgehammer was grinding away my sanity. No, sir, my parents are not moving in, and neither is anyone else. I don't know how the hell they managed to change the original plan so drastically without me knowing about it. It turned out that my parent-in-laws had a problem with the blueprints that I approved of, and told the architect in charge bullshit. Something like, changes need to be made. In a nutshell, they completely transformed the plans without my permission, and now, my house was unlike anything I ever wanted in a house. And they told the architect that I had personally agreed to these blueprints. The architect, who believed I would give him the thumbs up since he was informed I approved of the plans, was stunned for a brief moment before being visibly frustrated. I deeply apologized to him, which he graciously accepted, saying I wasn't at fault whatsoever. But it still meant that the finalized plans were much bigger than the originals, and far less satisfying. What was more, the garage was supposed to be built on a small plot of land, really did transform into a project to build a vegetable garden. This, too, was the work of my stupid parent-in-laws. The architect then asked me with a hint of the cold shoulder,
Are you certain you want the construction to proceed according to these blueprints, ma'am?
The awkwardness was excruciating. A few days later, I received a postcard that let me know of a delivery of some furniture for the house's interior. The problem was, I had no recollection of ever ordering such pieces of furniture. And what was more, it was cash on delivery. My parent-in-laws had struck again with an inexcusable act of selfishness. It was just too much for me by this point. I now knew that talking to Raymond about this damn situation wasn't to get me anywhere, and what with my patience at this point breaking, I appealed to my parent-in-laws, and I admit it was aggressive, but who can blame me? Mr. Cox, Mrs. Cox, please stop doing these things behind my back. My plans for a house are ruined now. Oh, what's wrong with giving you some ideas on making a better house?
It's our house. I think we should have a say in what ought to be in it, wouldn't you agree?
What? Our house? And then the truth dawned on me, and it left me completely petrified. Please don't tell me this isn't happening. Please tell me my parent-in-laws aren't thinking about living with us under the same roof. I flew into a panic, and I quickly called my husband. Honey, listen to me. Your parents are very mistaken about something.
What the hell are you talking about?
They're saying they're going to move in with us. You never had any idea this was going to happen, did you?
Oh, yeah. Now I know what you're talking about.
My husband's calm response sent a chill down my spine, and I felt my stomach churn and go all topsy-turvy. I took a deep breath, and went on to say, there's no goddamn way he authorized this without letting me know.
Well, I thought this maybe would be better for all of us. You're okay with this, right?
Raymond, I'm going to be clear here. I never once heard you say anything about your parents moving in with us.
Well, you just did. That's good enough, isn't it?
Of course it isn't good. This is terrible news. I don't like this idea at all, and I hope to goodness you change your mind.
Hey, watch your tongue. They're my parents. What's so bad about them? I don't see how they could possibly be that much of a nuisance to you. What's wrong with this idea, eh?
My husband didn't seem to have any doubts about this parents living with us. On the contrary, he started to criticize me for being so adamantly against the idea.
You're my goddamn wife, Stacy. Why in the world can't you get along with your husband's parents, eh?
Because they changed the plans of our house without my permission.
Well, I guess they did go a little overboard with the changing. But they're old. Cut their nosiness and their habit of interfering some slack. They're just trying to be nice and helpful.
That's definitely not true, Raymond. I don't have a relationship with your parents that's founded on trust because they've always done things that betray my trust in them.
You're gonna have to start building that pretty soon, Stacy.
This isn't about the future. This is about the present. In any case, like most people in this world, I can't live with people I can't trust. Psychologically, it's impossible.
You're such a nervous wreck, you know that?
Alright then. Since it's gonna be this way, and since I don't have another option to make you see the frickin' sense for once, I'm canceling the construction, and you can kiss looking for a house goodbye too.
Hey, whoa, slow down. Are you serious right now?
Thanks to my adamant opposition, the plan of Raymond's parents to move in with us was put to rest, never to be brought up again. But ever since then, I just can't shake the feeling of distrust I have for my husband, and this seemed to be mutual. He seemed to be getting more and more frustrated with me over time. In the midst of all this negative energy, the house was finally completed, and we officially had our new home. I was going to spend the rest of my life in this house, cooperating with my husband, nurture a very strong bond for our beautiful family. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly positive and optimistic about the future. On moving day, I was taking a break after unpacking a bunch of my stuff, when Raymond told me he wanted to talk to me.
And now I got my own house now. We got our own house now. And I'm also more conscious about being the head of the family and what it means to be that.
Is that so?
I want you to have that kind of awareness too. The awareness to fulfill your duties as my wife.
As my wife sounds like a bit of an exaggeration, I'll be honest.
Come on, Stacy, be serious. I'm not joking. I want you to know your place in this house.
I felt somewhat uncomfortable with my husband's pompous attitude, standing there in front of me, leaning against the high counter in the kitchen with his arms folded and his eyebrows furrowed. But I thought it was good that he had awakened to a sense of responsibility, and I agreed that I should do the same. So, I nodded my head and said, "Yes, I understand." But, little did I know, I was going to regret this decision very much, very soon. That weekend, I was on my way home when I got a call from my husband.
I'm inviting a bunch of people from work tomorrow. Could you start on the preparations for the party?
What? Tomorrow? I can't do that. It's much too sudden.
Oh, come on now, Stacy. I said the party would be tomorrow. I'm sure you'll do a good job preparing for it.
But I have an appointment at the hair salon tomorrow.
Oh, enough with the complaining. Which do you think is more important? Your husband's party for his trustworthy colleagues? Or your appointment with a beauty parlor that does a so-so job every time?
Okay, now that was hurtful. But he continued in the same strong tone.
Oh yeah, my parents will be there to help you get things ready for the party. Don't forget to thank them for their help, alright? Make sure they know you appreciate them.
The next day was the first weekend at our new house since moving in. After my hair appointment, I was looking forward to rearranging the kitchen and living room. Interior design had always fascinated me the most when it came to building a new house. But these plans just evaporated into thin air, because now I was expected to get a bunch of things ready for a stupid, spontaneous party of my husband's. And my parents-in-law were coming to help me on top of that. I had a very bad feeling about this. The day of the party, my parents-in-law came in the morning while I was preparing some of the food. I asked them to help out with the cooking when Mrs. Cox said, My, this cooking of yours isn't exactly an oil painting now, is it? You should at least order some sushi."
I'll order it.
We already have enough homemade food for everyone, and I already ordered sushi too. If we order more delivery stuff, our budget won't be very forgiving." Oh, nonsense, dear. Trying to embarrass your darling husband in front of his colleagues, are we?
If you're stingy, it'll affect your husband's career in the long run. Trust me, I know what I'm saying because I've seen my best friend's career almost ruined because of his ridiculously selfish wife. A lot like you, honestly. Pathetic, incompetent, unconfident.
Could you just set the food and the plates and the utensils out on the table, please? Thank you. I actually have an appointment at a beauty parlor, dear.
When the sushi arrives, you make sure it's ready to eat by the time we come back.
My parent-in-laws told me what they wanted me to do, and then left. Raymond was still sleeping in his room. For reasons I'll never understand, I somehow managed to get the party ready in time. I started to walk up to my room to get ready to receive the guests, but before I could... Hey, Stacy dear, this spot's still dirty here.
Hello? What's the deal with all this dust on your front porch? You better get it right and make sure it shines before the guests start to come.
We don't have enough beer, do we? Go get some.
My husband, along with his parents, had already got themselves ready for the party, and I had to welcome the guests to our house without makeup on. Well, welcome, welcome, everyone.
Please, right this way.
Go on, serve our guests their drinks, Stacy dear, if you please.
Come on, hurry it up, Slowpoke, we haven't got all day.
That party was the very definition of disaster to me. It was by far the worst party I've ever attended. Mrs. Cox, my mother-in-law, all dressed up and ridiculously glamorous, treating me like I was a slave. Raymond didn't even bother to introduce me as his wife, and I had to greet some guests myself. Considering the fact that I didn't have any makeup on, and the fact that I was wearing a grease-stained apron over my best dress, they all had a puzzled look on their face. They must have thought I was a housekeeper here. I felt completely miserable. After that, my husband started hosting more parties at home every weekend. Every single damn frickin' weekend, and my parent-in-laws never failed to show up. My husband invited his colleagues and their families, and before I even knew it, he'd gone on to invite some of the neighbors and their family members as well. In other words, he was letting complete strangers into my home without ever consulting me. My parent-in-laws were always the same. They never helped me in any way whatsoever, and instead acted as though they were the host of these parties, ordering me around to do more preparation work and telling me to serve food and drinks to the guests. My husband had exactly the same attitude, if not worse. He never once introduced me to anyone as his wife, and always found out deadly drunk by the time everyone went home, well into the night. At first, I complained to my husband about this load of nonsense. Do me a favor, please. No more parties on the weekends.
Why not? These parties make everyone so happy and so relaxed.
I work a full-time job during the week. I spend my entire days off getting things ready for these stupid parties. You have no idea how exhausting it is.
But you do realize my parents are helping you out, right? Or are you so stubborn you refuse to acknowledge their help? In that case, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Helping me? Like hell they are. All they ever do is show up for 2 minutes before running off on some errand.
You're not welcoming the guests as well as you should be, and they're doing that part for you. Help can come in many different ways, you know. I suggest you be more open-minded and admit they're saving your ass every weekend.
Your parents don't help me get these parties set up. They don't clean up after they're over. All they do is eat, drink, and talk.
How freaking dare you! I will not have the likes of you talk about my parents in such a disrespectful way.
But you know I'm telling the truth.
Need I remind you that you were the one that was so adamantly against the idea of them living with us? That's why my parents have to travel all the way to be with us, because you freaking ruined their hopes of living with their son and his wife.
Oh great. This again? Was the first thought that sprang into my exhausted mind. Whenever I talked to him, or disagreed with a decision he made, he would always try to bring the argument to his advantage by reminding me I refused to let my parent-in-laws move in with us. He always said, I did what you wanted me to do, so now I expect you to keep your end of the bargain. As the days went by, I couldn't even take a legitimate day off because of these weekly parties. But then, I suddenly realized that I hadn't invited my own parents to the new house yet, so I told my husband. Don't plan any parties this weekend. I'm inviting my parents over.
What the hell are you saying? No. That's not freaking happening. I refuse.
Huh? What do you mean, I refuse?
Do you have any idea what it means to be a wife, Stacy? You're my wife, and you willingly married into my family. You treat my parents like they don't exist.
Okay, that's a bit of a stretch, Raymond, and you know it.
You can invite them over if you want, but remember this, my parents come first.
Oh, come on! That's just not freaking fair! Your parents come over every week, and as long as you throw parties every weekend, I can't invite my own parents over. Why do your parents have the privilege of spending time with their son, while my parents want to spend time with not just me, as their daughter, but with you, their only son-in-law? I really don't know how I got myself into this mess. How many more sacrifices was my husband going to demand me? I have absolutely no idea. I immediately thought I should talk to someone about this, and it didn't take long before I decided whom I should talk to. I called my mother and told her what had been happening up until then. I tearfully told her that I couldn't invite her to my new home, and apologized so many times. She was surprised at first, but she went quiet and listened to me tell her everything. Okay, honey, I think I understand what's going on. First things first, you get yourself back home this weekend and we'll sort things out. But I've got a party to prepare for. Oh dear, you don't even know what's happening to you, do you, honey? Wait, what's happening to me? You're tired. You're so exhausted that you're losing track of yourself. My mother's words startled me for a brief instant, before the truth dawned on me, and then she went on to say, I have a great idea that'll most certainly help you, but we won't do it if you don't want to. It's entirely up to you, my darling. I urged her to tell me what her great idea was, and, as she gave me the details, I admit I was very surprised to hear my mother's good idea. If we do take action, my husband and his family would undoubtedly suffer a great deal of damage. I still wasn't sure if I should do it. More than that, I wasn't sure if I could do it. Try talking to him one last time, and then decide what you think you should do, based on the situation. She left the decision to me, and I decided to heed to her advice, and did what she suggested. I talked to my husband again about the matter.
God damn, you're freaking persistent. I've had just about enough of your bitchiness, Stacy. I've said this once already, and I'll say it again to be brutally clear. You can invite your parents over when my parents don't come.
I interrupted him while he tried to bring up the same argument that he'd sacrificed living together with his parents for me, and told him in the most straightforward manner possible, No, you listen to me now. This is your last chance, Raymond. For the last time, I'll state my wishes. You will not be planning house parties without my knowing about them. You will not invite your parents over without my permission. And finally, you will let me invite my parents over this weekend. This is my final decision. I told my husband to accept these terms.
Last chance? What the frick are you talking about, woman? Don't you dare play games with me.
I will not let you and your parents be selfish ever again. Mark my words, I'm gonna fix things around here.
Now you listen to me. You refuse to let my parents move in with us, so obviously you're going to have to put my parents first, considering the fact you stabbed them in the back.
I thought I'd interrupt him at the same moment, so I wouldn't have to listen to that brain-dead argument stating that I never had the appreciation I should have towards my parent-in-laws, but apparently I was wrong. Furthermore,
the family of such a scumbag wife will never be allowed to step over our land, you hear me? Never! You are never going to invite your parents over, and that's freaking final. If you don't like that idea, get the hell out.
I realized that talking to him was completely futile now, and as a result, I've given up. I'm just done. Finished. I'm throwing in the towel, and I was glad to do it. I thought that if I put up with him, he'd be more willing to be flexible, but he wasn't. On the contrary, it made things a lot worse. I pursed my lips, trying my best to stop the tears from streaming down my cheeks. All right then, I guess I'm out of here, but I suggest you prepare yourself because you're gonna regret it. My last warning. Hopefully he thinks things through and makes a rational decision for once. What was his response, you ask?
Like hell I'm gonna freaking regret it. Don't you ever show your face in front of me again.
He actually sneered at me as he ordered me to get out of the house. So I left home and stayed with my parents for a while. And then, I noticed my physical and mental strength start to slowly recover. I finally realized that I was being brainwashed by my husband enough so that I pretty much had to obey him whenever he gave me an order of sorts. The most important thing for him wasn't me, his own family at all, but rather, his own vanity. He had used his new house and his own wife for his own personal gain on purpose. I made up my mind to go along with my mother's ideas because I knew it would do two things: salvation for me and exposure to the truth for Raymond. It had been a few weeks since I returned to my parents' house. I was feeling a lot better. My job is actually close to my parents' house, so my motivation to go back to the office went back up. I was living healthy and well, but during this time of rest and recovery, away from my husband, he never stopped emailing me. At first, the messages were something that contained the words, "I'll consider forgiving you." Needless to say, his condescensions transcend into the digital world as well, and every single message expressed his concern about the upcoming party at home.
The last home party we planned, it was canceled. It's all your fault. You're ruining my reputation at work. Why are you freaking doing this? Enough games, Stacy. Get your stupid ass back here. We've got another one coming up this weekend. Do your duty as a goddamn wife.
Raymond was planning an important home party at the end of the month, and he was furious at the fact that I refused to go back to him. Some pretty important people from his job were scheduled to show up, which, admittedly, is a great honor. It was an important event for my husband because it gave him a big opportunity to be promoted to something much better. On the day of this party, I dressed up very nicely, and along with my parents, went back home to attend it. As we walked in, I could see that my husband and my parent-in-laws were entertaining the guests, laying out delivered food on the table, and distributing drinks. I recognized his boss and many of his colleagues who were also attending the party, and I went to greet them warmly.
Welcome, welcome, if I may, madam. You look beautiful in that dress. A real bombshell, truly.
Why, thank you, Mr. Cox. I think it's the only nice thing you've ever said to me. Mr. Cox realized who he was talking to, and so did Raymond and Mrs. Cox. As soon as they saw me, their breathing became immediately a lot more angry, and what they said wasn't any better.
What are you doing? Get your stupid ass to work.
Hey, what are you doing in that despicable outfit?
What kind of wife are you? Where the hell have you been?
And then my in-laws reached for the hem of my dress. Just as their hands came into contact a couple inches, my mother stepped up behind me and slapped their outstretched hands away. Please don't touch the dress that I designed with those greasy hands of yours. What the hell are you talking about?
Hey, that woman's my son's wife, ma'am. You keep out of this.
My, you sure got some moxie, calling my own daughter your son's wife and not by her real name. During the exchange between my mother and my parent-in-laws, my husband's face grew paler and paler.
Oh, Wait, what? Hold on a second. What do you mean, my daughter?
So you're the host of the Tay's party, I see. Can you show me around? I'm very interested to finally see this new house of yours that you and my daughter have worked together to build.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot. You were the person who said you would never allow the family of such a scumbag of a wife to step into your land. Isn't that correct?
My husband's face, looks turned to become more shades of white and red, and sometimes both colors at once. He looked like a pulsating candy cane. Yes, indeed the guest of honor at today's party was my own mother. My parents are executive officers of a business conglomerate affiliated with the textile industry. The centerpiece of Raymond's company business strategy was for the fiscal year was to collaborate with the Department of Design with a bigger company, and that department overseen by none other than my mother. So, my husband, being the stupid show-off that he is, offered to entertain the supervisor, whose identity he didn't even know, by the way, at one of his fancy parties at home. My mother was working so acutely that Raymond apparently failed to notice it was her, which, in of itself, it pretty careless to be frank. Even worse, they actually met when I brought him home to ask for her blessing to get married, but like I said, my husband is a very sketchy man, so I suppose he just forgot. Excuse me? How did your daughter come to behave in such an excusable manner?
Who freaking cares? Get your freaking ass in the kitchen. And these old gas bags better follow you too.
Stop it, stop it, stop it! These people are valued guests. They're guests of honor, in fact.
What?
What? My husband and my parent-in-laws were freaking the hell out. It was a glorious sight to behold, and I felt internally grateful to my mother for letting me experience this majestic moment. My mother's eyes darted to my husband. "Go get me a drink, please." My husband bolted into the kitchen and came back with 2 glasses. Dad looked at the 2 glasses and said,
Bring us another glass for our daughter.
Raymond glared at me, but the stares of his boss and co-workers around him caused him to turn away, head back to the kitchen, and trudge back to where he stood with another glass. I accepted it graciously as I shot a cankerous ton look toward my parents-in-law.
What's for dinner tonight, Mr. Cox? Would you mind fetching me a plate? Who do you think? Yes, sir. Of course.
I want to sit down. Can you lend me a chair if you please? Is this really all the food you have? I'm afraid I don't think it's enough.
Oh, is it, ma'am? We don't believe so.
Why don't we get some sushi? I'll even order some. But of course, are we gonna have to pay for it?
Oh no, I'm afraid that will be difficult, ma'am. We're on a tight budget, you see.
Oh no, if you're stingy, it'll affect your son's career in the long run, you know, Mr. Cox. I smiled at them as I tipped my glass back and took a sip of champagne. It turns out that one of the guests at the party that night was an acquaintance of Mom's, and she'd been invited to a few other parties of ours in the past. She responded, "Your daughter's husband and her parents-in-laws displayed terrible behavior towards her every time I attended. She was dressed in a crude apron over a simple dress most of the time, and she didn't have any sort of makeup at all. She looked so neglected and overworked. Anyone could have easily mistaken her as a servant. Even I couldn't believe she was the mistress of this house until after I went to talk to her. I said hi, and I immediately recognized her as Stacy. I was so surprised. Her face was the very picture of exhaustion, and the poor girl was struggling to stand. I must have made Mom so worried about me because I was weak-minded. I'm fine now, but those hard days still made me feel depressed." During the party, Morin had Raymond bring her drinks one after another as she criticized how bad the service of his parents were. Dad made himself comfortable and went on talking with some other guests from my husband's company and even exchanging business cards with them. After the party was over, I spoke to my husband. "Thanks for your hospitality. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like you to sign this for me, please." I handed him the divorce papers. He'd been humiliated at the party today and let anger take over himself as he signed it. My parent-in-laws tried to stop him, but I guess tonight was all he needed and got too stubborn for his mind to be changed.
There you go. Happy now? Of course you are. I'm done with you. Don't ever show your face to me again.
I accepted the divorce papers from him, grabbed my coat, and stepped outside of the house. I walked out beyond the gate, towards our car, where my parents were waiting for me. I stopped, turned around, and stared at the magnificent gate. I knew I was never coming back. I took one last look at the house I had always dreamed of having. My husband changed into a monster because of this house, and almost lost myself in addition to that. I made nothing but bad memories in the house, and while it pained me to accept it, it was a part of my life that I just had to let go forever. And after taking a deep breath, I turned around again, strode to the car, climbed inside, and left the area in bright spirits. After that, I was absorbed in my work to make myself forget about the unpleasant events of the past. I got out of paying off the mortgage on the house in my husband's name because of the divorce, and I had no more money to spend on preparing for the weekly parties. Money was no longer an issue. I moved out of my parents' house, rented an apartment, and started living alone. My ex-husband was transferred to a regional office by his company. The company determined he would be an obstacle for my mother's business. My ex-husband moved out of the country, and thus couldn't live in that house anymore. But he still had to pay the mortgage on the house all by himself. And because he knew that his pay was far from being able to do that without making some big sacrifices for some time, he asked his parents for help. But they refused. Raymond and his parents had been on terrible terms ever since they refused to help him. After that, I honestly don't know what he did with the house. I overcame the trauma inflicted upon me by my ex-husband and his parents, and this time,
I made sure my room was decorated completely to my liking. I designed the interior, arranged the new furniture, and even consulted the landlord for some new wallpaper. And nowadays, on my days off, I'm improving my cooking skills. All in all, my life right now is wonderful, incomprehensibly better than a nightmarish life with my ex and his parents I had to endure. Sometimes, I invite my parents over for a small home party, just 3 of us, and treat them to a nice home-cooked meal. In this way, I am now able to have a very comfortable and wonderful time with my family. My goal for the future now is to continue to cherish my parents and be grateful for each and every happy day that welcomes me.